We were angry.
We were so angry.
Yeah.
Wow, you're becoming a podcaster. Great job.
Podcaster is my middle name.
No one wants to hear this ramble.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started. Some big news. We are recording our last podcast,
Womp womp.
womp womp, of 2023.
Fudge.
Fudgicles! And today we have a special guest with us today, Mrs. Jordan Lee. Hi, Jordan. Goodbye.
It's half day at school, so it's bring your daughter to work day.
It's super cute. It's her first time being here, and she always asks about our work. And so it is great to have her at the office, especially I think it's so fitting for today's episode, right? You know, we've been recording this for the last 10 episodes. Actually, we've just passed 10 episodes.
Oh, is that how many we've done?
Yeah, more than that.
More?
Yeah, totally.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, so it's that's pretty cool. And so we thought that it would be a good idea to
Sorry, you might hear little excitement, but it's, you know what? It's Friday. It is the last day of work for everybody.
yeah.
Wilson doesn't know this. And it is what it is. We're ready.
So today's format is a little bit different. We're recapping on what we have learned in our last year of doing podcasts, recapping some lessons that we can share with you guys if you guys are thinking about starting your own thing, whether it's be podcast, business, new routine. I think there's a lot of relatability for a lot of people. Yeah. And then, so as a recap, because starting next year, we're going to be having some new, exciting, new format. Yeah. So let's dive right in.
Cool.
Cassandra.
Can you not call me by my full name? I'm always like, what?
What is, so we're going to be talking about the top 5 lessons.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do top 5. For
Okay.
you, what is it? What's your first one?
For me, I think there was a lot of learnings here. And, you know, for us, I think our objective of all this wasn't to have it kick off and be like, we're podcasters and we're super high growth. I think more importantly, at least how I looked at it, was we were here to do our reps, and to get into the groove of doing this weekly and how to integrate it into our work and personal life. Because to add on something new and then to hit the same quality bar that we always look for, I don't know that that was realistic. But to do it in a way where we were just to do it to have fun and look at it without any KPIs, any key goals, but just to do it so that we could get better in the future when we have time. That was the mind frame that I had. And I think that really allowed me to be here, because it was like, if it wasn't for that, I think I would be looking at things really differently. So I think initially my number one takeaway is, for me, it's just don't focus right on the results, but really to rep.
So don't really put that pressure on yourself to be a perfectionist.
To be a perfectionist and look for like, hey, the key, you know, super high, great quality results, especially when it's something new. And for me, it was a bit of like a testing ground, and it allowed me to alleviate a lot of the pressures it may take, especially when you're putting yourself out there.
Totally.
I didn't want the pressure, especially because it's in front of other people. I really didn't have the frame of mind of, I need to do this to make sure that this is the most viral podcast ever. It was like, I'm just doing this because it's a time that's set in my calendar, and it allowed me to reflect in a way of what we've done and a bit of connection for me and you.
Right. So what I'm hearing is for you is to start when you're not ready and not seek for perfection and just do it. Do you think that encapsulates that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great attitude, because I think the number one thing that scares people off with doing anything and taking a plunge out of your comfort zone, whether it be traveling, your own new routine, or a new business for that matter, is taking action. And what scares people the most is the act of committing and not being able to perform at your very best, and that things must be to the T. As an example, it's like, we have friends who's trying to start their own business, and he's been stuck with his own business name for years. And that became his crutch of not starting his business, because he couldn't find his name, his business name, right? He wanted it to be the perfect match. And so I think it's a great lesson there is not to seek for perfection, but just start right away. And for me, that's a really big reason why we are doing this and the way that it was structured, because for those that don't know, this is our round 2. We actually started this and we recorded, I think, 8 episodes before we scrapped the entire thing, because all the episodes were just not working out.
We were angry.
We were so angry.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. It was, oh, well, okay, first of all, we did it at home after we put the kids. Sunday night, like we were in no mind frame.
There you go. It's
to get it done.
It's the mind frame, and also the setup, and I think the expectations on each other, and also our own mental well-being and mind space that we're at the time wasn't allowing us to be able to perform and really articulate our thoughts and be rowing in sync on that. So
I think that's a good segue for really our next key lesson around having good energy and having a presence.
Oh, wow. That is such a great segue. Wow, you're becoming a podcaster. Great job.
Podcaster is my middle name.
Cassandra, podcaster Chan Lee. See how I slipped that Lee in there at the end?
I noticed that. Lee is not my my legal name, and it's his way of stamping his
my presence on you, placing my flag on you. Energy is huge. I think that, initially when our first round going at it felt like every episode we were trying to kill each other, and at the same time we're both committed individuals, so we still did it.
Talk about couples therapy, like this, for anybody who's not even doing this to start a podcast, just do it and then release it and use it as a therapy option.
I don't even think it's therapy though. Come on.
It's not therapy. Well, I mean,
so not
definitely
therapy.
A test of relationship. No, sometimes it can be.
Oh, no. Yes and no. When we're in a groove, sure. When we're not in a groove, it's like the opposite of therapy. We need to go to therapy after it. Like that's how it was. And when Josh was here, he helped us like, okay, you know what? I think it's also the space. I don't need to set up as much. And every time he's setting up, it was like 30 minutes of setup. And you're just doing your thing, blah, 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 blah. You come in, you're like, hey, where's my script?
I do not get involved in any of the tech setup.
Zero tech setup, no script, no nothing. Comes in, expects to be like, oh, what? This is the script? It doesn't make sense. There's no structure to this. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about that? And so for me, I had so much pent up resentment towards you, because I'm like, God damn, like, why? Right? And so a lot of resentment on my part. And for you, you're just coming in, you're like, man, do a better job, Wilson. If you're going to do this, own up to it, do it better.
I didn't say that. You're just pulling this. No, you're right.
That's exactly what it is.
And I'm just saying, I didn't say that out loud.
And there you go. And so I think like people feel it in the energy, and for us, without the right energy, and I think like podcasting, as much as we are trying to do a podcast that is unscripted and we just have talking points, I think the lesson here is that in order for things to be entertaining, engaging, and that we can actually win per se. We must support each other. So when you're drowning in your thoughts, or if you're talking about riffing on something that is completely adjacent to the topic, I need to help you bring it back in. I need to support you along the way so we can actually build up a real good conversation that we're bantering, right? And I think that only comes when both our energy is on the same level field. And if it's not, then there are times where you see me drowning or vice versa. I'm like, yeah,
There are moments.
yeah, you drown in that
Yeah, we
silence.
both were like, I think in particularly one episode where we had to reshoot or re-record was because we got in a bit of a tiff right before the recording, and from there I was like, I don't want to ask you any questions, you go talk to yourself. And of course vice versa. And obviously I knew that podcast was pretty shitty, and so did he, and he went and told our dad Josh, who
Producer.
helped us produce this, and he was like, so I looked at your recent recording and your initial recordings, and you guys without me is terrible. Like, this energy is so different. This is not good. And so we had to re-record everything. And some of the tips that we used to really bounce our energy back up was our little ballet dance. One day we had to do a little cheer before so that we wouldn't hate each other going into the podcast.
Yep. Speaking of preparation and energy and how it relates back to you, is whatever you guys are starting and whatnot with a partner, it's so important to be in sync and to learn to operate as a team, right? This applies, the energy applies to how we carry ourselves through conversation, but it also applies to how we work together, and it also applies to how we build each other up.
And when you were saying that, like, banter, because we are technically, let's call it on air, there are things that I can't say, but I need to kind of sign or gently cut off when you are speaking too long or saying something that may not be relevant to the audience. You know, we could say that to our whole podcast, but anyways, like, there are some things where we just needed to cut it short or adjust or skip over or gloss over. And you can only do that through kind of, I don't know, what is it? Reading each other's body language to be like,
and the
cut
vibe.
it off.
There you go. Yeah. So working as a team is huge, right? So make sure that the energy is matching and always uplifting each other, because when that happens, our work, our vibe, everything is just 10 times better.
Yeah.
Right. And now when we're talking about how do we work better, I think the next big lesson that I personally take away from this is that it takes time to find our voice and find out what works. Whether you're content creating, whether it's like finding your business, whatever the case may be, it's so important to feel in flow and feel that what you're doing actually resonates. And for the purpose of our podcast, finding our voice, I think, is something that we are still experimenting on, right? It was really interesting because in the beginning of the podcast series, you always gave me the feedback of, man, can't you just be yourself? You're so cringe.
You were cringe. You are when what?
And you just keep saying that I'm so cringe, and I'm like, man, it sucks to hear, but I get it because I feel cringe as well, and not an excuse, but rather because my last identity as a podcast personnel before in my last channel, I was more of a, I would say, what am I?
You know what really triggered this is Toastmasters.
Can you let me finish?
Well, I'm tying into the why.
Please.
Why I think that voice was there and present from you enrolling in Toastmasters, because they teach you how to be more structured, and the technical pieces like exaggerated voices and exaggerated body language, and then you can tweak it then down to your natural voice when you are doing your speeches. And I think when you start from there, you're kind of starting at the top where you're a bit more extreme, big movements, loud storytelling, the tonality of your voice, they teach you all that. And then I think and then as you slowly take that away and tone it to carve into your voice, and then you also then use that, with your background, you constantly use that. Like some people tone it down then bring it back up, but for you, because you consistently had this platform to use your voice, the repetition. So it's the years of repetition from.
That's the framework that I used. You're right.
Yeah.
And it has been what I had followed, and so it worked. That channel has like 170K subs, and so
I'm not saying it's bad.
Oh,
I'm just saying like
this
is where it started from.
Exactly. Yeah. And I agree. And I think that like at that time, that voice kind of worked. Did I really like it? Not necessarily, because not really who I am as an individual. And so, yeah, it took us the first half of our podcast series for you to consistently tell me that I'm cringe, and me cringing while you telling me that I'm cringe, that I started to be like, okay, let's develop another voice. Let's bring the other side out. And it's very difficult at times, because you're like, how do I switch it back on? How do I switch it back off? Which is quite interesting. But nonetheless, for us, we're still experimenting the different formats, how we can really amplify, because when it comes down to camera, podcasts, you do need to exaggerate a little bit more. You do need to have more emotions in your talk and whatnot.
I agree. Right? I can't say that I agree. For me, I don't think that like that is me, but I can hear from the podcaster audiences why that energy is important and it's noticeable.
Yeah.
So I do think it's valuable. I just think like me as your wife, I'm just cringing. But you know what? It's been better.
Thank you. Like my battle scars are like everywhere now, and I'm still alive to tell the story, tell the tale.
Scars that tell stories.
Exactly. Like out of everything that we have done and all the challenges that we had, all the travels, all the work, and everything that we've been sharing, the number one common theme and biggest lesson that ties everything together is to be consistent.
This I learned from you, because if it was me, I would be like out of here.
Yeah.
But you know what? The great thing about you and this partnership, and for any habits, I guess, is that you made it really easy for me to. I think I am a barrier to show up. But if you eliminated all these barriers, like you really were the one who helped set this stage up, do the recording, and made it easy, which made it then just become a rep in my mind. And for me, that was probably the hardest barrier, was just to get here and then do it.
You know, that's also the hardest thing to do.
I know. So you're doing it for the both of us. Yeah. Props.
High five. Yeah, air five. It's crazy, because like even from like working out to like all the different, thank you. I appreciate that, and I gladly accept your compliment. Not much, but you know.
What do you mean?
I'll take that. But yes, consistency. If there's one thing out of my working experience and everything that I've learned in life, is just to be consistent. It is so key in any type of results that you want to see. Whether you want to be able to write to be a blogger or a vlogger or whatever the case may be, commit to at least, I would say, a year for the craft and for the habit to build. It doesn't matter how shitty it is, doesn't matter how hard it is, doesn't matter whatever the case it is, you just need to commit to it on a weekly basis. And for us, when we first started in the beginning of the year, as difficult as it was, we still did it every single week. And as we traveled, even though we did take time off, we still was very mindful of keeping it consistent. And because the consistency will actually reap so much more rewards, right?
Also the buffer time, right? Like preparing to have that many episodes to buffer our time away allowed us to integrate it a lot more into our busy lives by having that backlog.
Yeah.
So I think that's important as well.
Super consistency.
But speaking of preparation, I also think preparation is very important. I think we're laughing because we know
this is the burger, the shit burger that Cass is gonna give me right now. So hey, good job, you know. But
I think, you know, as I don't think a lot of people would expect that the podcast we have been recording has been like so light in our topics and agenda. Like we come in and we kind of know what we're talking about, but I think even better would be to have a very clear outline and the format and run through of what the podcast items could be.
And I 100% agree with you. I did not, and it was a very cautious decision that I personally have made to not do that. And I'll tell you the reason why. It's because we don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to focus on making the podcast a thing. And what we're doing is really, once again, putting in the reps. And so therefore, until we have the bandwidth to deal with it, it is going to be working on status quo, very light work, just doing it, putting in the reps. And then once we have the support, aka Alex, now we have a producer. Now we have someone to be able to help us find out. And now we have the bandwidth to figure out, hey, you know what? How are we going to be able to build this content machine into something that we can into something that we can utilize, and into something that we can double down on. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic.
Let me share. So, yes, agreed in that essence. However, I think when you ask for, hey, prepare some items to what to talk about tomorrow during our podcast, and I go and spend time following your list of questions that we're gonna ask and things I'm gonna answer, and I do it this morning right before we do our podcast, following his format, and then I get a WhatsApp message after it's all done, let's call it an hour before the podcast records, says, hey, let's talk about lessons we've learned. And I'm like, oh, well, I did that for the lessons we learned this whole year. And then when we jump on this podcast, aka when I sat down here, put on the recording, looked at the agenda, and see that everything is scrambled with only his thoughts on what are the top 5 lessons learned from the podcast. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we switched it around. It just kind of throws me off a little.
You know what? No one wants to hear this ramble, okay? I'm going to pull you back in. No one wants to hear this ramble.
I think a bit more preparation so that us two can be in line would be great.
I agree. Now, you know what?
Wait. I also have one other lesson that I think we learned, but this is more on a personal level.
Okay.
Is really about connection and reflection outside of everything.
What do you mean?
Between me and you. I don't know how many people are recording with a co-founder, partner, even a husband and wife. But one thing that I had appreciated is all these little tiffs and arguments that we have. But then when we talk about a reflection through the week, it's always nice to then be like, what I'm grateful for, what I appreciate about you for, what I don't appreciate you for. It's just a nice way to kind of recap. And not everybody has that format, but personally for me, I think a bit of time where we can have a very And this isn't, I wouldn't say this is a genuine, like, it's not like a behind the closed door, but it is a conversation that, a formal conversation that we're sitting down to talk about it.
Oh, you know what? This is great because there's zero distractions. We're so zoned in, and it forces us to articulate our thoughts.
And a bit of just reflection.
Yeah,
So that's what I would say is a
great. It's such a great gift.
great lesson learned. I don't know.
It's a great gift for both of us. I really
That's what I mean by
appreciate it.
therapy.
Maybe.
Anywho, let's flip it over. What are we talking about next?
Well, all these lessons that we have learned, what is the one thing that you're proud of for us in everything that we have really come together to achieve in the past year? We've done a lot.
Podcast or not podcast?
What's
yours? Why don't you start?
Well, for me, and the reason why I wanted to kind of list off a few things that we have accomplished as a team first is because for me, the most proudest moment is something that caught me off guard. For example, in March, we did a fundraiser event in New York. I had a huge, it was a huge success. We had a 100K grant that we signed on with an ecosystem partner. We created a entire application that we had no business in creating. We moved to Hawaii for 2 months, lived there, worked there, raised our family there. You went on to win a pitch competition, which is insane for me. I'm like, whoa, you actually, as you committed into this journey, you went and won something. Huge validation. To the launch of the podcast, to flying to Lisbon, doing a 2-week activation, speaking, all this crazy stuff. And when the moment that you asked me, this is like 2-3 weeks ago, you're like, hey, Wilson, what are you the most proud of throughout this last year? I thought my response would be one of those achievements, but rather I was actually super proud that we could work together and how we were able to learn to work together, and that I was able to learn so much from you, genuinely. So I just want to say thank you, like genuinely so much, because it is difficult to think that I've been operating in my own capacity for the past 10 plus years, and now welcoming you as a partner, not even as a wife or anything, but as a partner in building a business together. And me having, and knowing everything about you, me having to be humbled by you and stuff that you bring to me, and this entire startup that we're building together. I'm just so thankful that you're here and that we have such a great relationship, even through work. And although not saying that it's always rainbows and sunshine and everything, but that was my proudest moment for sure.
I'm not writing notes in my agenda because you just steal my notes.
What, it's not there?
It is. It says how we work together. What's the most proud of thing? C dash how we work together.
It says
Under
Hawaii.
point says tested our relationship.
Oh, there you go. Oh, okay, cool. Clearly I don't read your stuff.
You clearly don't read it, but you just go and steal my points. But yes, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And
clearly.
Yeah, no, I think I think that is the biggest win for this year was I think when it comes to 2 founders, 2 partners or more, I think it's important to be able to recognize each other's strengths and opportunities and see how each other's skills supplement it. And I think what I am most proud of, which is exactly what you are, is because I think we were able to find that, and it took a second to navigate through how to best work with each other, how our skill sets can complement each other, and how we got into the groove to work in our own lanes, but also work together more cohesively. And I think now we've been at a better groove of what is our where it is. I feel like a lot of this 2023 year has been a lot of discovery between exploration between us as leaders together, like even exploring our vision and the paths forward together, and even defining what together could look like from a work capacity. So yeah, I think a lot of that is that, and it tested our relationship. And now that this is solved, like, you know, considering that we're both partners in this, it really bleeds down to how we can find clarity and direction for the next big the next moves, because I think without this foundation of us doing so, it's hard to find the path that we're going to tackle. And I think it's very clear.
We have laid such great foundation. I think there's a lot of parallels in how our relationship is and how we build our family. Is it's very much like dating. It's like me dating you again, and like we just have very different ways of doing things. And to recognize that and to know that we're heading towards the right direction. And initially it took a bit, because I'm very proud of you, because you jumping into entrepreneurship is very different from what you used to be doing. And to find that clarity in your own strength took a bit, right? And you just having the courage to jump in was everything you needed.
Well, I mean, it took a lot of work. I was not like that in the beginning. I was very
totally.
I was in a bit of a funk in the beginning of the year. And it wasn't until a lot of self-discovery and journey was I able to be like, what is it that I am great at, and how my corporate skills can be complementary and transferable here.
We always had that talk. Like in the beginning, it's like, oh, what is it? And it was a struggle. And part of the reason why I want to share this is because we're now at a point where we can say that, hey, we are finding our groove. But it took us almost a whole year, and the foundation that we have. And so that was a really big lesson, is that it's a discovery process. There's a lot of self-work, deep work that you've done. So kudos to you for that. Yeah. And the second piece is, even after we had clarity on each other's strength, I think that we didn't really turn that leaf until we had alignment in what we're building. Because in midway through, we were still going at it, we're building and we're hustling and everything. That was great, but the alignment was still not there yet. We're still building on two different agendas, and the vision was still different. Very similar to how like a relationship is like, right? It's like, oh, you want this, I want kids, I don't want kids, whatever the case may be.
As an example, I like, even halfway through in June, I remember we would connect and we're like, this is a good vision, but then you would get inspiration from a VC that you're talking about, like this is where we could bring it. And then the thing was, it's like, how do you bridge that gap? Because you've been so used to driving that vision siloed on your own. And now to bring it back and have that connection and conversation first about what's in line, how does this pair up, blah, 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 blah. Super valuable content.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay, as if they just fast forwarded for 30 minutes. Exactly. That was the tangent. Nonetheless, the key here is a lot of deep work for both Cass and I to have the curiosity to learn and explore. And the second piece is to find the alignment in vision. And once we're both on that same page, right now, I feel like we're so ready to conquer 2024.
Same.
And I think like what we can do is, why don't we transition to 2024, what we're looking forward to. I do want to bring up this exercise that we have done too, really quickly, just touch on it, because I think it's super valuable.
All right. Yep. 15 minutes before I gotta go pick up the kid.
Okay, let's do it. So for 2024, the reason why I'm so excited is because a few days ago, Cass and I, we sat down and just basically mapped out what 2024 would look like all the way until the end of 2024. And it was a very valuable experience because for me, I now have so much more clarity on what the steps are in order for us to achieve these goals. For example, hitting $6 million in revenue. I'm like, you know what? I'm not scared by the number, but nonetheless, I never had this kind of clarity that by this date, we're going to hit this much in revenue. I had that. It was always about, sure, I want to make X amount of money, dollars, whatever the case may be, but by when and how are we going to be able to do that? And now we have everything mapped out. And so why don't you share a little bit about the process and the importance of this?
I love your spontaneous ideas.
Yeah.
So
The sarcasm. Okay.
why I think this is important. I think we were always operating. So this came from us knowing that if we're not fundraising, we need to really be clear in what we're trying to do.
Correction. It's not like we're not fundraising. It's
Okay,
like
sorry.
we're
We're
building.
delaying. We're okay.
We're building for because we believe in our product so much, and we believe in the strategies that we're doing so much that we feel like that we can continue to bootstrap the business and delay fundraising until we get a lot more results, therefore better valuation.
That's what I said. Delay fundraising. Anywho,
Sure.
if we're delaying, and also if we're not, now that we, I think the first step was being able to align on the vision, right? Me and you, we've pivoted the vision, and now that we had that really set, and we've done a lot of work around what could be realistic goals, but how do we get there? And one way to do so was really not imagining, but really thinking about by the end of the year, what are the goals that we want to hit to make this successful? Knowing that we want to have, let's say, 20 brand partners, for example, be part of this system. Well, what do we need to do when we work backwards to get this system, this product, to be able to integrate for these 20 brand partners, and then thinking about the workflow that way. And now when we list out everything we wanted to do by the end of December, we can work backwards. And now you have a beautiful roadmap that will keep you focused and allow the teams to know what we're hitting for. Because a lot of it was, I think we were looking at it from what is our next objective. Like, for example, we wanted to just hit the event, build into one event. But what does this event mean in the long term? How does everything we do support the overarching goal? And we, because we are a startup, we can't always just pivot. You're wasting your money, resources, time on different directions without a clear vision. And so if we can work on doing things that would support the overarching long-term objective / vision, we're now marching in the right direction, and we're being smart about what we're spending, the time that we're doing, the resources that is going everywhere.
Yeah.
And now I think and it was great, right? Like now all our team can just be excited about what we're doing and not thinking about, okay, what's next?
There you go. That's what's happening for 2024 and why we're so excited for it. And for us, we're going to be doubling down in our content as well. In 2023, content and podcast has been a warm-up for us, but as we turn the leaf, we're going to be making this much more structured. We're going to make this podcast much more to create content to serve you guys rather than just us going on a rant and tangent all the time.
The therapy is over.
The therapy is over. You're right. Now it's get to work season, guys. Time to actually build a community, And yeah, we're excited to bring you guys along the journey. Make sure you guys like, subscribe along the journey, and let us know what kind of format works for you. Otherwise, we'll see you
See you
guys
next year.
next year. Yay, that's a wrap.
Woot. Done.